People think you're smarter when you're wearing glasses on YouTube, right? That's the rule. Instantly, 15 IQ points. Guys, we live in an age where every single scroll is a mind-blowing insight or idea. Wow, I didn't know that. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, awesome. It's no longer about the ideas. It's about how much time can you spend with the idea going deeper so that it impacts you and changes your life. And so these 5 books, I think, have some of those ideas that are worth investing into. Now I'm nervous I'm like overhyping them. Cures the blind just touching the book. I had leprosy and then I read the books. In 1961, NASA was testing their spacesuits. They had to make sure that if they sent someone up into space, they weren't gonna explode. And so Victor Prather went up in a hot air balloon wearing one of these new suits. Now, mind you, these suits he could breathe in. They were even waterproof, so even if water got in them, it would be fine. They were like a scuba suit. He goes up 113,000 feet in this hot air balloon, and everything works perfectly. So on their way down, he takes off his visor, takes in the view, gets some fresh air. Only one problem. When they were retrieving him from his successful mission, he slips, he falls in the ocean, which wouldn't have been a problem, but because he had lifted his visor, he drowned and died. That's a true story, and it comes from our first book, Same as Ever, in the chapter titled Risk is What You Don't See. Despite all the planning that NASA did, all the tests, all the money, all the R&D, the thing that made it an unsuccessful mission for Victor was a simple lifting of the visor and taking in the view. Look at COVID-19, look at the Great Depression, look at some of the wars, look at 9/11. These are things that you just cannot plan for, flat out. And so this book is all about, okay, if we can't plan because there's risks and we don't really know, how that's all gonna, we don't have a crystal ball we can shake, what can we do? Well, the best way to plan your future is looking at the past of what doesn't change. There's that famous saying, history repeats itself. He argues that history doesn't repeat itself, but man always does. I didn't think much of this book, really. Like, I didn't go out to a store and say, okay, I'm gonna buy this book, or it wasn't on my list. I randomly was just scrolling through Audible and it came up as suggested. And so I started listening to it and I couldn't put it down. And it was refreshing that it's not like a tactical self-help book with, okay, here's your problem, here are the 5 steps to overcome it. It's much more of a story-driven, philosophical approach to some of the biggest questions in life. And in fact, in the end, there are some great questions. I'll give you a few here. These are amazing journaling questions, like who has the right answers but I ignore because they're not articulate? What are we ignoring today that will seem shockingly obvious in the future? What do I desperately want to be true so much that I think it's true even when it's clearly not? And who do I look up to that is secretly miserable? Now, I gotta be honest, this next book, I really didn't want to like as much as I did because it felt sort of like cliche entrepreneur bro on Twitter. Takes business so seriously. Society is built on people who are enslaved. Young 20-something pretentious attitude that, hey, I had when I was in my early 20s as well. But I've read this thing like 5 times. It is so damn good. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant by Eric Georgeson, who put together Naval's tweets and podcasts and everything he did and into a concise little package here. It's basically 211 pages of shower thoughts, including bangers like happiness is what's there when you remove the sense that something is missing in your life. Desire is a contract you make with yourself to remain unhappy until you get what you want. Happiness is not the absence of problems, but the ability to deal with them. I think my favorite idea from this, you want to pursue wealth, not making a lot of money. Wealth grows and money is made. You could view wealth as passive, that it taps into compounding and it snowballs bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger with leverage. Versus money, you gotta work for it. Hustles, side hustles, salary, etc. Now here's where I really like this is, and this took me like 10 years to learn. Wealth and money doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur. Like, I see so many people in this entrepreneur space. I'll meet them at masterminds and we'll be really good friends behind the scenes. So I'm privileged to know like how their business is doing. We even talk finances, like, hey dude, how much you saving? What are you investing? All those kinds of conversations, right? And people who make a lot of money, okay, I'm talking like $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. And then in 5 years, they're like, dude, I'm in the red right now. Like, things are pretty bad. I'm thinking like, what do you mean not good? You were making 300,000, 400,000. Yeah, but you know, that goes fast. In other words, they're making a ton of money, but they're not building wealth. How you get rich is having money and funneling that into wealth building assets. Things like the stock market, you know, look at index funds, real estate, those are great places to start. Private equity or businesses, those are harder to get into, but again, can be a great vehicle. Even things like crypto can be in there. And if you're willing to funnel some of your money to build wealth, you get to a point of where you make your first 100,000 in there, and then the next 100 is way faster, and the next 200 is faster, and 400, and a million. And then after that, it just flywheels because of the power of compounding. No matter how much or how little money you make, don't let that stop you from building wealth. Good one for sure, well worth a read or several. Before we give you the next one, books are great, but I think questions that you journal on can be even better. So if you want the 11 best ones that I used over the last 10 years to change my life, I'll link them down below. You know, tens of thousands of people have downloaded and benefited from them. It's 100% free. Just put in your email. It'll get sent straight to you. Book number 3. You ever wonder why certain images feel powerful and universal? How every culture has a myth of a warrior or a shadowy figure or a villain? You ever have reoccurring nightmares? The same dream over and over, and it feels like it's trying to tell you something. Or ever see that trend online of back rooms? These really eerie liminal spaces that feel like we've been there. Well, these aren't random, they're messages from your unconscious. This book talks about exploring your unconscious primarily through dreams and dream analysis. Now, Jung analyzed over 80,000 dreams. One part I really love in this book is that dreams aren't useless, that it's a hallmark of genius, being able to tap into the unconscious. You look at some works like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that story came from a dream. It was given to them through a dream, and then, you know, they just transcribed it and they were a messenger from it. Same thing with songs. You know, a lot of musicians, I'm a musician, if you are, you can relate to this. If you're writing a song or a melody, sometimes you don't even consciously do it. It comes through you and you're like, holy shit, like where did that come from? That's my best stuff. I can't even take credit for it because, yeah, I don't even know if that came from me, but I guess it is. You get in that flow state and you're channeling your muse through your unconscious, subconscious. And then what's so funny is sometimes, I don't even know if I'll put this in here, it might be too far out, but like, you ever had an idea for an invention or something and you don't act on it, and then like a year later you see it on Shark Tank? You're like, what? That was my idea. I had that idea. Or like, you know, I have this all the time where I have an idea for a video that I think is unique and niche, and then boom, it'll come up on my feed. Like that's the collective unconscious that we're all plugged into. And I believe if you don't use it, someone else will. The universe, God will give that idea to somebody else that will use it. I love this book on the collective unconscious, the unconscious, dream analysis, man and his symbols. Fascinating for sure. Book number 4. Next up is a book more on embracing what is instead of trying to change or fix it. Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach. What I've found in playing with this idea of accepting what is instead of trying to change and force something is that when you dissolve it, you don't need to solve it. So if you have fear and you just sit with your fear long enough and you approach it from every kind of angle, left, right, up, down, you journal on it every single way, you eventually get to this point of where you just accept it and you move forward in spite of it. You're not trying to get rid of it. And in that moving forward and recognizing it, it dissolves away. What if you weren't some giant self-improvement concept and project that needs to fix and arrive at places? And what if we're missing the whole point that nothing is broken with you and that it's all these messages we're getting from society and culture telling you, you are this, you're not that, here's the label, this is what you need. just wiping that clean, you are you at an essence, at a core level. Who are you at the core? Because everything else around us is made up, right? Like, I know you have a core of who you are since you were 7, 11, 14, 21, that doesn't change even if everything else around you does. Even if your clothes change, the people change, your opinions can change, but there's a core of who you are. How do you tap into that? Well, that's what radical acceptance is. It's about releasing and letting go of what's not you. And now from that place, that is where we create from. So yeah, if you're someone who wants a lighter approach and you feel like things feel really heavy for you, this is a beautifully written book. I can't recommend it enough. And I hope it changes your life like it did for me. Here's what I've spoken about on this channel before, but I've never put in one of these videos. And I read this thing, no joke, at least once a year. In fact, I was going through the tallies where I every time I read a book, I put a tally in the front cover, and this one has over 12. This book is The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. And I'd go so far as to say this video and this entire channel would not exist without this book. That's how big of an impact it's had on me in my creative work. The main concept is that there is a force over every single one of us called resistance. And this force has a destructive intention that it wants to hold you back from achieving your dreams, from getting in shape, from having healthy relationships, from making tons of money, from creating your art. There's a myth of Odysseus in here where he's on a mission that's like years long. He's with his men on his boat returning home, and he can see this hometown Ithaca in sight, the smoke from their family fires on the beach. They're all celebrating, mission accomplished, we're finally home. And so he lays down and takes a nap while his men go rummaging through his purse because they thought there was gold in there that he was holding out on them. They open this bag and out pops the adverse winds that knock them all the way back to the starting place of their whole multi-year journey. Some angry king had cursed Odysseus and bottled them up in there. And the myth goes they had to repeat the whole journey a second time. And what this myth is representing in the case of resistance, it's strongest at the finish line. Like, resistance doesn't say, I'll never write my book. It says, I'll just start it tomorrow. Resistance doesn't say, oh, I'm not excited to write a blog post or write a script for a YouTube video. It says, yeah, this is probably crap. It's not even worth putting out there. Resistance will have you start new things 15 different times instead of finishing one thing one time. The point is that resistance is strongest at the finish line because it knows that if you put yourself out there, now it gets real. You could get rejected, you could look stupid, okay, things are real. But if I just stay in this preparing zone, everything's safe. I don't have to really put my work out there. I can just like keep it to myself and, I can go for perfection, which doesn't exist. And oftentimes it's in the quantity of producing a lot that you get data, you really get good because your neck is on the line. And you can learn lessons when you're doing the thing, you're in flow, you're actually releasing stuff, you're in the arena. You learn lessons that you can never learn if you're just preparing, reading, and researching. You can't learn to surf from a textbook, and you can't get over your resistance by thinking about it and learning. You have to do. That is why I love this book. It gets me fired up even talking about it. This is my most gifted book by far. And those are the 5 books I'd recommend you read. Thanks so much for watching. Love ya. See you in the next one. Stop settling, start living. Peace.